You are listening to the Law and Justice Show with me, Tanjuini, and this is Haki FM, the oasis of justice. I am with Advocate Giant Mugendi in studio, and we're talking about the freedom of worship vis-a-vis regulation of churches. So I want you to keep those questions coming at Haki FM on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, or you can call me on 07993882337 or 07503882337, or you can WhatsApp me on 0791740453. Wakili, I played that song deliberately.
Yes.
Because there's a line I like. Mm-hmm. It says, waumini kwa mathri, na pasi kwa bima. I'll translate that for people who do not understand. Waumini ni the followers. They are using public means, mathri, matatu. Whereas whomever they are following, or whoever is leading them to God, has a BMW. And now, I love that line so much because it holds a lot of truth in it.
Yes.
So, it takes us back to the question, should religious organizations be subjected to taxation and financial reporting, given the influence that they have in society?
Well, this is the point which we ended on. And like I said, I'd warned you it will unsettle you. There is no justification you can advance why churches can be exempt for taxation.
The reasons given include that they are non-profit organizations, for one. Number two, to deter government interference, especially our government, which has a penchant for taxes. I think this makes a lot of sense.
Maybe that is a saving grace for the budget deficits. Because look at it this way.
Yeah.
Terry. If you suggest to me that they are non-profit, the evidence of that would suggest otherwise.
God.
Because you just played a song that said the pastor is using a BMW and waumini wanaenda na matatu.
Yeah.
And that is the evidence of the failure of that system of tax exemption. Some of these so-called rogue preachers are making obscene amounts of money. I'm talking about obscene amounts of money, all untaxed. Now, these are the same preachers who want to, one, enjoy government benefits. Say they would want people who like the government to enjoy some benefits, for instance, land provided, and you are not paying. There are quite a number of things that I think the church is exempted from. I know in land they will still buy and pay stamp duty, but they will participate in the governance structure one way or another. They want to be in the State House WhatsApp prayer group advising the president. They want to be involved in the government. But the key thing that the government is looking for resources to build everyone else is where they draw the line. I think that cannot be a fair enough reason to decline the invitation to tax churches, especially when they engage in commerce activities that generate a lot of revenue that number one does not even flow to their own congregation. It only flows to the few. Are you seeing the hypocrisy there? Or I'm being too mean? I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy. If you say you are non-profit, we only deal with things that concern the well-being of the society. You will never have the government building hospitals. You will never have the government needing to build schools. After all, they have majority of the schools. I started the show by telling you 1,048 secondary schools have been done by religious organizations. That is excluding Nairobi. So that's a huge number. Now imagine if some of these churches say, we want to actually do good with all the wealth that is flowing. The evidentiary results of that will be perhaps the government will even not need to do anything, because they will have solved literally so many problems in society. They will have been providing a good society where there are good schools, good hospitals. Look at some of the churches that have built hospitals. Some have done well. Some have a lot to be desired. But if you look at the amount of money that they're making, it is obscene. You have people like, let me give you an example. You have people like Elon Musk who are building electric cars. The government gives them tax benefits, but the benefit is not absolute. Why? The revolutionary changes that he is making have such a wide impact beyond personal gratification. The personal gratification that some of these preachers have displayed is as a result of earning revenue that has not been subjected to taxation, because it does not benefit anybody other than themselves. So it is even contrary to what they were registered in the first place. And that for me lies the decision to tax them, or my idea to tax them.
If at all now we were to go the taxation way, I'm just wondering what will the metrics look like? Because even if you walk out here, by the time unafika tao utakuwa umepatana na pasta. So where do we begin if at all you were to go this direction? Because like you're saying, even if it comes to training, we have a very huge the dynamics are way too much. So how will that look like?
It's the same way the government is supposed to tax you as an individual. The government is able to have a system where they can know everything about you. The government does know everything about you if they want to. And that's why you do your tax returns. This is the income I received. These are the tax deductibles. So these are my tax returns. So it is not something that it is completely unfounded or out of air that it cannot be done. Furthermore, remember what we have, as I began by saying. Some of these people registered for non-profit. So where is the profit coming from? The profit that is actually encouraging members that your ability to access heaven is based on how much you look after me. Perhaps the challenge cannot be on the congregation. That's why I said the one way to check this thing is, number one, you started by saying you're a non-profit. We have seen your flow of funds is not going towards those non-profit issues. It is going towards buying you the latest Mercedes-Benz, the latest BMW, the latest Maybach, or Tesla. Yeah? You've seen preachers, even in the US, who come to a sermon and say, the Lord told me last night that I need a Gulfstream 650. You sit and wonder, I wish I could talk to this Lord, because the God I talk to is not material, you know. So that cannot be a non-profit agenda. That is why my ideology for that is, as long as your activities have crossed that threshold of non-profit, and furthermore, your participation in government activities, societal benefits together with the others without an equal contribution is also not Christian. Yes.
Besides taxation, Wakili, and besides, or rather, how can religious organizations be contained so that they are not misused for financial gain and exploitation?
There are two things which I still want to suggest. There is an immediate measure and there is that long-term measure. We all want these churches said to be disciplined because, like I said, you are wired for positivity. So when you see someone doing a negative thing, you are automatically wired to say that is wrong, right? The first measure which I have alluded to is if you operate a non-profit but you are earning beyond the non-profit status, then you automatically invite taxation. Okay. If you want to participate, because some of these preachers want even to formulate government policy. Yeah, they want to formulate government policy because their platforms have become political. They have become political arenas. Now, if you want to formulate government policy, then you might as well also participate in the affairs that contribute to its growth. That's number one. Number two, the churches or the individuals who claim, number one, to be Christian or have a religious background. Remember, religion is very personalized. Personalized. Your decision to go to a particular sect or observe a day of worship is based on a set of beliefs and values. So if that is the case, your ability to understand, interpret, and formulate ideologies that, number one, affirm your view and also propagate them to other people in the correct manner can never be a collective issue. If a pastor does not do Bible study, for instance, and comes and preaches a sermon on Saturday that he has heard on Saturday night, even you sitting in the audience will be able to detect this is not true and genuine. Now, if we have the ability for instinct, how come we don't use it to make decisions that are actually good for our personal interest? So, everyone has that obligation internally because this is a non-coercive agenda. There is no democracy in religious affairs. We do not have democracy. The individual is the supreme.
True.
So it is not a democratic affair where the majority have decided, no. It is up to you to read the text, to understand it, and to comply with it. Let me wrap that part with saying, if you look at the Hebraic text, the Hebrew language does not have nouns. The Hebrew language does not have definitions. The Hebrew language only has action verbs. What is this? They don't say it's a pen. They say, I write with it. That's why when you hear God saying, who is this? I am that I am. There is no noun. It is a verb. It is the doing. It is. So when they describe things like the God who crossed the Red Sea, the Jehovah Jireh, there is a doing. So if you do not have that in your personal life, then your ability to interact with religion, even at a broader concept, will be compromised until the day you are in tune with your personal relation between you and God.
Okay, and in cases where religious beliefs or practices may be harmful to the public or national security, in as much as the government may want to stay away, how should it intervene while upholding the right to freedom of conscience and belief?
I was anticipating that question. I didn't know it would come at this stage. There is something even within the policy that they kept talking about. We have vulnerable groups that we need to protect on the basis of public health, morality, and safety. And the fundamental freedoms, ability of others to enjoy their fundamental rights and freedoms. Now, I would want you to closely examine this with me. That broad definition can also be very ambiguous, because if I tell Terry, your religion insults mine, should the government interfere that on the basis of public health, safety, morality? But that is an invitation with which we are being invited to do it. If you look at Article 66 of that bill, that is some of the implications that they were leading us to. There are people who say, me reading the Bible, this is a true church of God. Now someone else will feel, no, that is mine. You saying that offends me. Now, we think by talking. So you cannot live, even in the realm of civil government, we say you do not have speech that is qualified. You cannot live in a society where you are free from offense. The hazard of benefiting and engaging in society is you will be offended because people think by talking. People cannot walk on eggshells around you just because you'll be offended by a statement. That is why you see many people have major issues with some of the liberal ideologies. Like, someone gets offended because I didn't call them this, them. You know, that makes, if you understand it from that concept, then you understand that if you're making people avoid making strong statements in the name of religion or proclaiming their message with vigor on the basis of religion, then you will have done a disservice to even the realm of free speech. And so it makes the public, that broad concept, morality, fundamental rights and freedom of others, you know, those ones can be stretched. But you remember in COVID time, for instance, the government limited interactions, associations. The government did not say you cannot worship God. It only said worship Him in your living room. And of course you would have gotten the message from where you are. But it interfered that on the basis of public health. I was only using that as an example to demonstrate that sometimes we can stretch the excuse of fundamental rights and freedoms on the basis of morality because we understand things differently. And sometimes that has been used, even in ages past, as a pretext for a lot of things that are not right, actually leading to religious persecution on that basis, that we just want to protect the public, we want to protect the vulnerable people. And the pretext is for public order. The moment you hear that, you know you're in a lot of trouble. Yeah.
I would like to know, Akili, how do other countries balance the religious freedom with regulation of religious institution, and what lessons can we pick from there as a country? Drawing a good example from Rwanda.
Well, Rwanda right now also has a war with its own churches. So I think there are quite many. I hear they're about what they've tried to cut them down from about 20,000. I don't have the statistics offhand, but even Rwanda's case may not be the best scenario for us going forward in terms of protecting religion. Let's look at how the United States does it. The United States says religion is not a pre-qualification for office. In fact, if you look at the framers of their constitution, they made it clear that all men are free to worship God according to the dictates of their conscience. And that right is protected, including the manner of discharging it. Now, that religious distinction does not prevent, say, from the FBI investigating Creflo Dollar. Just picking an example. Who I think was under investigation for some time for money laundering, racketeering, and all manner of things, together with some other notoriously wealthy preachers. The government there is organized in a way, as long as you interfere with the enjoyment of the societal benefits arising from this social contract that we all enjoy, then we will come in and correct it on behalf of the society. So that it can be used as a good example. They have also provided examples because they have also had cults. They have also had religious extremism. They have also had preachers who have misused their pulpits and engaged in activities that went beyond that freedom of worship. So the moment you cross that boundary, if we had more time, I would have delved into it a little bit further. It's even from the Dark Ages, the temptation for civil government to leave their space and to enter into the space of worship, even in things like, let me give an example where the government was in concert with the priesthood. The priesthood is exacting a tithe on people. The government is also enjoying a taxation that is flowing to that priesthood. That the priests were in those Dark Ages, they were enjoying such immense control in government, and some of the wealthiest people were actually not entrepreneurs. They were not government people. It was a priesthood. So the organization of that government showed as consequences, number one, that the society became poorer. The society became, the pursuit of knowledge was not there before. They ceased. And those are the lessons that we take to learn. That the moment church and state united, sometimes even to prescribe that this will be the day of worship, and going contrary to that right for you, I said it, to worship God the way your conscience is dictating you, then at that moment they entered into a space for which they have no authority whatsoever, because the Holy Spirit was never committed to the government. The Holy Spirit was committed to the church, and it convicts people individually. Yes.
Now, Akili, how does one emancipate themselves from this chokehold of religious beliefs?
Yeah.
And because maybe you didn't grow up, but now you want to see the light. What do you do?
You're already doing it. The fact that we're having this conversation is an eye-opener to so many people who want to see what is a solution going forward. And at the break, I was sharing with a friend of mine who, a very good friend of mine, we share a lot on religious liberty and just close friends. It's called Paul Mweru. We share the ideology that the only way to fix some of these issues, you see, these engagements, we have them frequent. We engage a society, we help the society become empowered. If this message is reaching 1,000 people, let it reach 10,000, let it reach 50,000, 500,000, 1,000,000. Let's have situations where we have caucuses between the old and the young, encouraging grandparents to be involved with grandchildren, encouraging parents to be present in their homes, encouraging children to do more of the work that is outdoor than indoor. The influence of today's society is actually based on things that we have allowed subconsciously. Yeah, the message that you take in germinates, it grows, it ferments, then it becomes a very strong conviction that will take a lot of time to break. So if it took a lot of time to break, it cannot. If it took a long time to germinate, it will also equally take a long time to break. And it will require a lot of patience. It will require concerted efforts from people like you to identify some of these solutions, to take some of these proposals. For instance, we just started the show by saying the government does not have a campaign that parents should be together in a home for the betterment of society. There is every evidence that having a present father is good for society. We have reduced deviance in society when we have both parents in a home. Then perhaps that can be a proposal even for county governments, for social protection, to the Ministry of Gender, to the advisor of the cabinet on gender issues. That can be one of the campaigns they can put. The campaign for alcohol, drug abuse has been done. We are still fighting. This one we are barely scratching the surface. Mm-hmm. And I think if we do, we can get somewhere. Yeah.
I find the aspect of religion in a person's life quite interesting because, unlike all these other things, you don't get to choose necessarily religions. You could be stubborn and choose, because maybe you're put through school. After high school, you decide, now me, I'm going to pursue law. Me, I'm going to do journalism, and everyone is fine. But more often than not, the religion where you are born into is who you become, is what informs your belief system. Do you think this is a contributing factor to the sort of brainwash or brain drain we are seeing around?
I give you an example of my friend Paul Mweru. He also has a brother, very good friend of mine, Duma. Both of those friends of mine were not Seventh-day Adventists before, but they had a desire that even I am still catching up right now, to investigate for themselves. What does God say about A, B, C, and D? When they did, they formed a personal conviction that was contra to what they grew up with. And for me, the issue is not really a day of worship or this and that belief. For me is, do you have an ability to interact with God? What God says, this is my message. Have you interacted with it long enough? The truth is, most people don't want to, or they don't have time for it, or it's a lot of work. So you'd prefer to hear a sermon on Sunday and say that's enough for the week, or Saturday or Friday at the mosque, and that has taken care of your issue. But your ability to form those ideologies of personal conviction will require you to go that extra mile, beyond the personal comfort or beyond the bare minimum, so that your conviction stands on solid ground. Because you could have a very charismatic, influential preacher. They come and convince you. Tomorrow you meet another one. Are you going to be changing your views every other day you meet a significantly influential person? Absolutely not. And that should not be the case. That is why I'm insisting that perhaps one of the things that we should be championing for and encouraging people for is that ability to search for yourself. And that you can even see in school. Look at the way we used to do homework. Half the class didn't want to finish. You just wanted to come and copy and present. The results come, you want to complain that perhaps you did not do. So even at the basic interactions in our society, we can still witness evidences of dishonesty. And that dishonesty seeps in and becomes even more evident when we interact. You're able to interact with someone and you see, how this person is actually more knowledgeable on this subject that I should. Perhaps you're even in the same field. And you can see that distinction. So that ability to form a personal choice, for me, is a safeguard that we should all protect. That it will give you a push to make an informed choice. It will be meaningful for you to engage for yourself, because we see God differently. Like I said, from the Hebrew perspective, your experience with God is so personal, it's different. Let me borrow some biblical examples. When Jacob interacted with God, he walked out with a limp. When Moses interacted with God, his face was shining. You see the difference? Everybody has a different encounter. When Saul interacted with God, he became blind. You know? So the conviction is very personal. And the manifestation of it is the evidence that God treats us as different as we are. If the author of this religion is saying, I accept you the way you are and I don't judge you the way you are, then who are we now to start prescribing for people that no, for you to access God you must go 1, 2, 3, 4. I hope that makes the distinction clear.
Yeah. Bringing us to exactly 6 minutes to 10 a.m. And we're just wrapping up the show here in studio with Advocate Jane Mugendi, talking about the freedom of worship vis-a-vis regulation of churches. My name is Tain Juedi, and this is the Law and Justice Show. Wakili, as we conclude, what are the benefits or drawbacks of establishing religious affairs commissions to oversee religious institutions as we finish?
For me, I don't see any material change that will occur with having those commissions, because number one, even if you look at the way they propose to set them up, you have representatives from not all religions, but what they think would be majority of religion. Like we said, religion does not have democracy. Religion is highly individualistic. So to say that these people now will speak on 85% of Christians would be a bad joke. Yeah. So there are those Christians who have organizations that don't subscribe to NCCK or to the Evangelical Association of Kenya or to the priesthood of Catholic bishops. So where would be their representation be? Because they have views or they have ideologies that should ideally form part of the commission. Number two, remember the whole issue of the primary issue that has come out of the policy is, one, we do not have sufficient law to check religious extremism or harm that occurs from religious extremism and cultism. But here's a question which I always ask myself. If the regulation of conduct is, as of right, a matter under preserve for the government, why not amend the existing legislation to add some of those things that they feel are now within the conduct of government? Why do we have to create a whole new law? And also, look at how they have the bill addressed the issue of disputes. There will be a dispute. The commission should be handling disputes. I looked at that issue and I was a bit taken aback, because we have a thing called in constitutional law practice doctrine of exhaustion, where you start from where the dispute occurs, the nearest avenue for justice. That's where you start and exhaust that mechanism. In political parties, you have internal dispute resolution mechanisms first. You know, for churches, we had spoken about this earlier. If a person offends you, you invite someone who invites someone. You go and tell a brother, you have offended me. If that does not happen, there is a board, right, that has elders, deacons, and all manner of church leaders, where disputes can also be resolved if they are being religious disputes. If someone is disputing that my father has stolen land, that has got nothing to do with the church. And of right, it should go to court. So if these are the religious disputes that ideally also have not been defined, which is also another ambiguous point that we need to take caution of. What exactly is the dispute? Section 66 was suggesting that you disparage, you speak ill, you harass, insult someone. But that is also gives us a very wide latitude to make excuses for what a dispute will be. So do we want now to, remember we have said the government cannot be an arbiter of religion. Okay? The people who are forming that commission will be state officers, or they'll be holding public office. Now, if they'll be holding public office, it is ideally the government arbitrating in religious disputes, which, like I've said, we have not defined. We also need to do proper definitions of, in the context of religion, what is public order, safety, morality, because those can also be wide latitudes that can be used for or against the person who would want. And second point of that issue, if you look at the way the commission was framed, it selected what they thought would be majority as representing 85% of the Christians. We started by saying this is not a Christian nation. Right?
Yeah.
If this is not a Christian nation,
how then
do we promote some sects above others? Because if you can promote some particular sects above others, then you can even prefer one sect to another within that selection pool. And that is the road we do not wish to go on. So, for those reasons, I do not think that the conceptualization of that idea took into account some of those pertinent issues into play. Because if we have internal disputes resolution to solve disputes. Let me give you an example. Some of the major things that revolve around this dispute is a girl got pregnant, right? So how will the church handle this? Now, are we suggesting that can become a dispute intra-faith? That girl now should go and get orders that their church is persecuting me? Or we had so and so is an adulterer? Because those are some of the disputes that revolve around the churches. They are not disputes that we should now form a body, pay them with the exchequer money that we are struggling with to get basic services with, so that they can be resolving such disputes. I think it is a dangerous precedent which we could set. Let's just leave. If anyone is offended by the conduct of another person, the High Court has unlimited original jurisdiction to deal with a wide latitude of crimes, a wide latitude of civil and criminal disputes. So that for me would be the recommendation, that as presently constituted in the bill, it will not be a wise idea to even have that commission and dispute resolution mechanism. But if you want immediate results, like I said, please tax them.
All right. I want to take this chance to really, really thank you, Wakili, for making time for us. It is said that good things take time, and I see why this show took some time to happen. So, as we conclude, please tell us where we can reach you, or where the listener can reach you in case they want to.
Yeah. So I practice at the firm of Atenogola Company Advocates. We at Bishop Garden Towers, second floor. And my Twitter handle is Gachuba. Gachuba. GACHUBAH. Yeah. So you can find me there, and I'm on Instagram as well. I'm learning, and TikTok. I think I opened an account courtesy of my sister. I call myself Legrand, and my phone number is 0728 910 414. Yeah.
Okay, that has been Advocate Jane Mugendi, and we have been talking about the freedom of worship vis-a-vis regulation of churches. In case you missed this episode, you can always catch it at our website at hakifm.or.ke. That is where we end it today. Have yourself a fantastic day, and may God bless you.